Hello and welcome to Take a Wander with Shebs. Now, today I'm looking back at my talk with Alaa Daoudi. Alaa and I spoke live on my Instagram on the 29th of September 2020. Alaa is currently residing in Istanbul, Turkey as he moved across last year. You will see from our talk that his actual plans was to stay in Israel with his wife, but certain issues cropped up which didn't allow him to. You will find out why that is. So let's take a look.
Good morning.
Good morning to you too as well. Hope you're well.
I'm doing well.
Thank you for joining me. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Surely, I was born in Jerusalem. I was raised in the United States since the age of 2. I grew up primarily in the Bay Area, also known as the Silicon Valley area, but I've also lived in Chicago, New York, and also the Southwest in Arizona and Nevada. But San Francisco is where I consider my permanent home, basically. And now I've been in Turkey for almost 7 months.
What sort of career are you sort of into? Is it in the travel industry?
I was actually a banker for almost 12 years. I worked for a lot of the largest investment banks, Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, and AIG. After a 12-year stint in banking, I decided to start my own business and opened up a restaurant that I've owned for 5 years. Yeah, it's a health food-based eatery in San Francisco. It's actually been awarded quite a bit and shared in publications such as magazines and other pertinent information. So I still own it, but unfortunately, due to the shelter in place, has been closed since March, as every restaurant has been in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. So here we are now, just navigating the pandemic as best as we can and trying to figure out what our next steps are, I guess.
Born in Jerusalem, moved to the States. Did your parents move for work reasons?
It's a sensitive topic. We're Palestinian, and Palestinians unfortunately don't have the same opportunities in Jerusalem as the Israelis do. So for my family, it was basically in search of a better life. So they moved to the United States because there was much more opportunity, and everybody was essentially looking for the American dream, an opportunity for upward mobility. So it made sense for them at the time. My father's brother was studying at university in the United States. And so he had some family there and decided to go ahead and move out there and just try his luck in a new world, new country, and see what it would do for him.
Have you had a chance to travel?
Oh, yeah, extensively. I could count them if I wanted to, but I've been to maybe 70 different countries. I've even lived in other countries. I've lived in Tunisia. I've lived in Turkey now, almost 7 months. Some places I would spend weeks at a time, maybe a month, 2-3 weeks. Even Palestine, I would go and spend about 2 months out of each year. I've done that numerous times. I've probably been back there 25 times. And then I would just travel throughout the region, throughout Africa, throughout Europe, parts of Asia. So, yeah, I've traveled quite a bit.
Which one would you say then has been like more of your transformative travel experience? Would you say that sort of changed the way you view things in life?
What I've learned is we're all interconnected. So there's not one place that really, they're all special truly in their own way. Human beings live in different places for various reasons, and we settle based upon comfort. So wherever you find, a place of settlement, any city, any village, there's a reason for that. And some of those places are over, millennium, some cases that, 10,000 years old and what have you. So transformative, I guess for me, is growing up in the United States. We grew up in a bit of a bubble. We think that we're the only developed country, that we're the supreme country, and that's unfortunately a lot of the brainwashing that happens there. And you also realize as you travel abroad that others believe that based upon what they're being fed in the media or through just popular culture.
Are you talking about American culture here?
Correct. Americans in America think that, it's something that's very simple and naive, but they don't realize that there's, freeways and automobiles outside of, let's just say, America and Northern Europe. They don't feel there's developed cities, developed roads, developed infrastructure. Unfortunately, popular culture or movies in the United States portray a lot of the world as undeveloped, archaic. So when I travel abroad for myself and see it for myself, some places are much more developed than where I grew up, not knowing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
of course.
yeah, it pops your bubble essentially. But you also realize the reach of the soft power of the United States. You realize a local artist, a musician per se, where I grew up, and then he becomes or she becomes popular. You're listening to that person on a radio station, in a taxi, in a in an air, like for instance, like Nairobi, Kenya, and you're thinking, oh my God, and they are singing it as though it is part of their culture. So that's interesting. That just shows how interconnected we are. And just how essentially, and you also find people from all walks of life in all nations in every country. So when you travel as well, the lessons that I've learned is, you would go to you can name any country, you'd go there. There's a large expat community. There's a lot of people who live there. People love it. They've left their homes to be there. So for me, it just realizes that as though we think we're very diverse and there's a little bit of everything in the United States, there's a little bit of that everywhere in the world. There's a microcosm of just a variety of people living in a city and making their way through life.
Absolutely. You know what? One experience I can tell you. So when I first went to Cambodia about 5 years ago, I wasn't aware of their history because it doesn't get taught in our schools because it's not really. Why would they teach you it? So a lot of the stuff that we learned was European history, sort of British history. So when you go over there and you realize, oh my goodness, all these people were killed, literally millions. That is a big eye opener, and you're like, wow. And then it really puts life into perspective. So you see yourself, I'm stressed about this, stressed about that. And then you realize, actually, why? Because some of these people were literally, killed because they looked intelligent. And that is something that, until you travel, you're not going to experience that. Class yourself as an American, Palestinian, or how would you sort of class you?
We are. We are very much Palestinian American. My household is Palestinian. So, and Palestine also lives within us. It's in our food, in our language. It's in, when we go to our weddings, in our special events, we use a lot of traditional clothing. So we carry it with us. And no matter if anybody tries to push it away, it's always very much there. And so it's definitely a part of who we are. American culture, honestly, is pop culture. So it's great, but just like any pop song, you hear it enough, it kind of gets old, and you just, there's nothing really of in-depth value there. It's just something that just sounded good for a little while. So that being said, coming from a rich heritage, it's a part of your pillar of strength when you're in a world, honestly, in the United States, where it's just about instant gratification, me. Certain values that you cannot find externally are found within the household, and that's part of what makes you a strong individual to deal with all the challenges you deal with growing up in the United States. It's not nearly as an easy of a life as some people can assume it is. It's just a matter of being able to cope in a society that leads the world in some of the highest rates of crime and depression and everything like that. And I only touch on that to tell people that it's just not a road paved with bricks of gold and things are easy and everything just comes to you. It's just not the reality of the situation.
With the opportunities that you've had, though, because we were talking prior to you coming on, you were part of the Global Entrepreneurship Summit in Nairobi.
Sure.
How did that come about?
Definitely. So I have a friend that posted on her Facebook wall a program sponsored by the German government, actually, called Ampion. And it's basically amplifying pioneers. And they were holding, it was a 2-week tour of Tunisia in North Africa. So yeah, it was a 10-day tour of North Africa where they essentially put us on a bus. And I don't know the exact number, but I just want to say it was probably about maybe 60 or 70 of us, of which many were from overseas, from Europe and other parts of Africa. And then the rest were local Tunisians. Essentially, they drive us around the country and they want us to come up with technology solutions for some problems that we come across. So the group that I was a part of was awarded. We were all over half of us were internationals, and the other half were locals. We got second place, and that led me to being invited to the Global Entrepreneur Summit in Africa, in Nairobi, about a year after that. So that's what led me to go there. And was able to meet some of my Tunisian counterparts, and I still communicate with them till this day. I ended up actually, because of that experience, going back to Tunis, I think a total, I believe, of 5 times, twice for weddings, other times just for vacations. I would connect with a lot of people there. And yeah, it led to an amazing experience of being able to go to Nairobi. And it was just a gambit of the whole world there. I mean, just to kind of give you an idea, I was in a very small room with the founder of Airbnb, Brian Chesky, Steve Case, the founder of AOL, Paul.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you get exposed to some high affluent individuals or high influencers or whatever the correct term would be. And the speaker was President Obama. Now, they hold these annually, obviously not this year because of the pandemic, but it's just a great way to rub shoulders with basically movers and shakers on a global scale. So that's why it's called the Global Entrepreneur Summit.
What did you learn from those individuals? Obviously, as you said, likes of Obama, you know, what did you learn from these types of people?
They tell you their stories, their personal stories. You know, we see their successes, but they talk more about their failures and struggles to get there that we don't know about, that they don't discuss in the media. So, for instance, Airbnb, Brian Chesky said that his own sister thought, who would ever want to rent a space in somebody's home? How would they feel comfortable? And she was so resistant to it. And he just thought, okay, if I can't even convince my sister to want to use my service, how can I convince a stranger? But then somebody had to advise him that the personality type of his sister is what they call psychocentric. And she's the type to do it when everybody else does it. At first, she would be resistant. She's kind of wanting to follow the pack, and which he basically kept his vision, and him and his small team essentially kept it going. If he basically just listened to his sister's resistance, there would be no Airbnb today. He would have given up and thought that there was nothing there. So he explains that how difficult it was to convince his family circle about his idea, let alone investors and others, and how, you know, essentially they just wanted to give up, but they just kept the course and had to try different things. And fast forward all these years, obviously it's grown into a multi-billion-dollar company. You know, Steve Case talks about AOL and how people were like, who's going to want to get on this thing called the internet? And back in the days of dial-up, and essentially hearing that noise and, you know, it being annoying and what AOL meant. And it was just, you know, and all the criticisms around it at the time. But needless to say, if you believe in what you're doing, you know, and you're going to actually have to pivot quite a bit in life, you're going to have to adjust. But if you still believe in the core idea, you know, stay the course, you're going to get resistance. That's a part of it. And then, you know, I think what you realize is these people are very much human. You know, when you see them, I guess, spoken about, you may think that they're larger than life per se. But when you actually meet them, you realize they're human. I mean, this might be a given, but they're full of errors, mistakes. They've made many, they admit it, and failures and things that you think would be basically deal killers. But you know, they just got back up and just kept at it. And then sooner or later, they got the results that they wanted. And we know about them today, but their road wasn't paved with ease. It was paved with a lot of mistakes and errors and even their own personal, gut check moments of, you know, if they were really as confident as they were to follow through. So when you realize that, you know, if they can do it and they're admitting to you that they're full of, you know, contradictions a lot of times, there's no reason why you can't if you really, really want it.
Exactly. And I think persistence, I think, is really, really important in life. You know, you don't get to anywhere without hard work. And, you know, I travel quite a bit now, but, you know, when I was leaving university, I thought it was all going to be easy for me on a plate. And then, you know, someone close to me had to tell me, listen, you're not going to achieve anything unless you work hard, but along the way there'll be obstacles, there'll be failures, but that actually will make you better going forward. And it's absolutely true. In terms of your journey then. You're currently in Turkey, as we said, and obviously I'm in Turkey at the minute. You've traveled all around Turkey, I believe. Is that correct?
Correct. I was right in Mardin myself about a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
So I've done 3 different road trips in Turkey. When I first got here, I came here with my wife. We rented a car, and essentially we drove north to Edirne, which is very close to the Greek border, and then turned south, went to Çanakkale, and went to all the various cities around the Aegean Sea, which is shared with Greece. And then I got her to Izmir, and then because my wife was pregnant at the time, thought that it would be best because of the pandemic. The pandemic was just starting, by the way. At least we know it started much earlier, but where it was getting a lot of the attention was around the March period, at least in the United States it was. And then it started to affect other countries with the closures and the concerns, and that's when it was really beginning to kind of really take off. I thought it would be much safer to get her back closer to her family. I couldn't join her, unfortunately, because there's restrictions on internationals going to Israel. Although I was born there, they still see me as a foreigner. That's part of the political situation. But that being said, I dropped her off at the airport. She flew to Jerusalem. Initially, they were not going to let her in. They wanted to deport her, although she's from there. But she put up a fight in the airport. You talk about persistence. She was persistent. And after 3 hours, granted her access because her family was outside waiting for her. And they called it a humanitarian gesture because she was basically 7 months pregnant. So she got in, and then I felt better that she's in a safe place. And then I continued on my journey. I went down to various cities like Ayvalık, Marmaris, Dacia, Antalya, Alanya, Kaş, Kalkan, and there's all these various cities. And then I turned basically around the Mediterranean region all the way to close to where you are, Urfa. And Urfa is the birthplace of Abraham and the father, basically, or the great-grandfather of the 3 monotheistic religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. They come from his roots, his children, basically. So that's why they're called the Abrahamic faiths. So I wanted to see, because in Palestine is where he is buried, but I was very intrigued to see where he was born. And we call it Turkey, but at that time it was not. Turkey is just a name that's less than a century old. And visited where they say he was born. And it was also just a way of kind of, having my own personal moment and being spiritual. Just wanted to pay my respects and then head back to Istanbul, which I did. And then I met there's another friend of mine that's a Turk that actually wanted to take me more on a historical tour through central Anatolia. So we visited a lot of ancient Roman cities like Sagalos, Sardis, in English they call it Pergamon, but here they call it Bergama. So we went to a lot of ancient cities. Some of them are still intact. Sagalos is gorgeous because there's a fountain in the center of the city that's still working. So you feel like you're in that period of time. It's not like a lot of places are ruins, essentially. So you just imagine what it was like for human, settlement was at the time. Some of these cities look like you can just pretty much, still live there. And just to see the beauty and the rich history, so much of it in this country. There's too much of it, so much of the Bible was written up here. So much of the Abrahamic faiths essentially start up here. This is part of the Fertile Crescent. And this is, they believe that they have found the oldest settlement to date of any human civilization in Göztepe. So it's a rich place. You see the modern, a modern city could be an hour away with high rises, freeways and everything. And then you just drive, 40 minutes outside or an hour away. And then you see a city that's 10,000 years old. That you get an idea how people used to live and how they live now. And you see it in such a short distance, which is also quite intriguing.
Because you just mentioned Göztepe. My plan is to go over there. I read into it as well that they were some of the first, as you were saying, in terms of creations. Someone showed me a picture the other day about there was a picture of a head with like a snake as well. So there's so much history that I'm finding when before I came to Turkey, people always say, "Oh, go to Istanbul, You know, you've got your resorty areas like Bodrum, Marmaris, but there's so much more. All you have to do is just take a drive and come to the area where I am, and it's just full of rich history, and it's just it's incredible. I mean, the buildings here, I mean, architecture like this, you don't get it anywhere these days. You know, to have a building like this now will cost you millions and millions. You know? So it's just incredible to be in this country.
Yep, it's a special place indeed, and especially I think both of us are. You come from, is it the United Kingdom?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So it's for anybody that has access to Western currency, like the United Kingdom, the United States. It's really inexpensive here. You know, for essentially a 5-star meal that I've experienced, it costs you what it would cost for a little bit more than what fast food does in the United States. Yeah. Just to put it in perspective. And then, right, yeah, where you are, you're essentially in the Fertile Crescent. You're right in the heart of the Fertile Crescent. And it's just in every history book. That's where human beings, as we know so far, because history is always obviously developing and there's new finds every day, is where they begin to settle and build cities. They go from hunters and gatherers to actually building buildings and civilizations and laying walls and what have you. And you can find much of, you know, the artifacts in the British Museum, the Louvre in France, and also Germany, and throughout obviously the museums here in the country. But where you are in the south, it's very, I mean, some people might just call that Syria North because it has that feel of what Syria is, like Mardin, Urfa, from the architecture, the appearance. So for many people up in Istanbul, that's just another world. They use different spices in their food. They use even their language is sort of a melange of Arabic, Turkish, and Kurdish. And then it's just even the features of the people. It obviously affects, you know, in terms of what their exposure was and the various empires that went through those areas that did not reach up here yet. Maybe some people obviously moved up here in modern times, but in the ancient times, those cities were under a different rule. And now they're part of the Turkish Republic. But yeah, I mean, they're definitely special. Mardin is gorgeous. I loved it. You know what I mean? It's just, you know, that hillside looking down. You can go to some of those rooftops, and even at night when it's lit up,
oh yeah,
there's that glow, you know, and especially when we were driving through, and there's some patches of darkness, you know, between the cities at night. And then when we pulled into Mardin, it's just like pulling into an amusement park, essentially. So, but in a good way, not like bright, you know, neon. It's more of just like this rich gold, this golden color.
You know, I'm expecting Aladdin to pop up from nowhere, and it is that sort of feel to it, and you're like, it can't be real, but it is. It really is.
It is, yeah. It's not far away from where the, you know, Shahrazad, the Arabian, you know, they're old Persian stories. They're called Arabian 1001 Nights, but Mardin was part of that civilization, so it very much could take there. I mean, nowadays they say it was like Baghdad, but Baghdad is a relatively modern city when it was first built. So it didn't take place there. It took place more so in like the ancient Persian Empire, at least the theme behind the story. So it very much could take place in a place like Mardin.
Can I just take you back to something that you said earlier about your wife being in Israel, or Jerusalem at the minute? So what's the situation? Because you're saying that you can't go yourself.
Honestly, and it's a charged issue, but it is what it is. Palestinians, unfortunately, get the short end of the stick when it comes to the situation over there. The tapestry of our, you know, people want to kind of place us in two boxes, but Palestinian history is very old and ancient, and a lot of Palestinians have Jewish roots, Christian roots, Muslim roots. You know, I mean, essentially, we're a melange, we're a mixed people. But unfortunately, the politics right now there favor one group over the rest. And essentially, for me, although my wife, just to show you, I mean, she's 29, she's lived there 25 years. She's even worked for the Israeli government with autistic kids. This is a person that, you know, paid all her, she obviously, you know, paid her taxes, was a good citizen, was everything that anybody would be a model citizen is. And she simply wants her husband with her, who's from there, who has a lot of family there, zero problems with authorities or anything. There's no reason to deny us, and they still, just for the sake of, we're told, and I hate to use the word, but they're just being jerks, denied us, denied our ability to be together. So yeah, and then with that being said, I'm being shared articles by others showing that Americans are getting exceptions because their family members serving in the Israeli army and they want to visit them, or they have some, a home there or something that they can get an exception, although the circumstances are not emergencies or anything like that by any measure. So that also leaves a bitter taste, unfortunately, in your mouth, because you're looking for sort of the human side of people. And uniting a family should be anybody's objective. And putting yourself in their shoes is the first thing. And, a family should be together, especially while a child, was being born. So I honestly, my son now is almost 2.5 months old. I have yet to see him. I see him growing up through videos and pictures. And I haven't seen my wife in 7 months. U.S. passports, my wife's also an American citizen. Passport services are closed all over the world. Unless you can get an emergency. In Israel, they only offer, I think it's twice a week, a few hours a day, and we're being told that there's a huge backlog. So we think, we want to be on top of the list, and they tell us, just you're going to have to wait your turn. And 1 week becomes 1 month, becomes 2 months, and here we are 7 months later, still, not getting any closer. So even if we wanted to unite outside at this point in time, we cannot. She cannot leave the baby. Not that we want to leave the baby, but so she can come, but she's got a young child that is entitled to, and the Israelis won't grant him travel documents. Right. So he can never be an Israeli citizen. It's nearly impossible, although he was born there, and we'd be united here. But the fact that he's not tells them that he needs up to 2 years just to be granted residency. And then after that, he can apply. The parents can apply for what is like temporary travel documents, but they're not like permanent, citizenry. And that residency could be taken away at any time. And that's what happened to me. I was born there. My parents decided to immigrate to the United States. And then they expired, or they call it, they expired my permanent residency. So now when I go there, I go under the U.S. passport as a tourist and having to leave in 3 months, in 90 days. And it's a huge ordeal to try to get that residency back. Although, they know I'm from there. They know I was born there. They know my family's lived there for at least 8 centuries. It's just they don't want us there. And it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And people can excuse that kind of behavior and actions, but it's unexcusable. And, it affects everybody in different ways. For me, the reason we wanted to go there is my wife was pregnant. Her parents lived there, and we wanted family support. And she could use family support during that first year of raising a child. So, it's just, it's been its own challenge. Now, this pandemic has been a challenge for everybody, but it's also being used as an excuse by some. But that same excuse is not being practiced, universally. So that's why it's hard to accept. Why for instance, here, like last week, they let a bunch of evangelicals in to go work on kibbutz, which are like socialistic farms. So I can't be with my family, but a group of evangelicals coming from the United States just recently are able to get let in to go work on a farm. And that apparently is acceptable.
I can't imagine what you're going through. Obviously, people in your situation will know, what you've gone through, or they're probably going through it themselves. Have you tried lawyers? Does that work?
One of her close friends actually works for the Interior Ministry over there. She's Palestinian, but some Palestinians are able, just like my wife, to get jobs. You know what I mean? And she works for the Interior Ministry, and her husband is an actual attorney that deals with immigration issues and issues just like this. And essentially, he's, unable to do anything. So they're essentially telling us that, we chalk it up as part of the Palestinian experience, that, It's hard. It's horrible. They don't want to let you in, but, welcome to the club. There's Palestinians that are getting their homes demolished. There's Palestinians that are being deported. So it's not as though it's just an isolated incident. It's just one of, thousands of incidents that happen a day that just kind of, I don't know if it's to puncture the spirit or effects, but it's the story. It's the Palestinian story, unfortunately, and we're one of the tapestry of so many stories of people that just deal with hardship. We don't get to choose what we're born. We have no say in who we are and where we come from. It just is what it is, and just the fact of the matter that we were born there, we're from there, and we just don't happen to practice the religion of the ruling party. Essentially, we were then just, treated as, I don't want to even say second class, but I'd say third or fourth class residents, not even citizens, because they don't grant me citizenship. And my wife was trying to get citizenship, and even though she worked for the government, and did everything you're supposed to do, it's just so difficult to just get anywhere. She tells me that she goes to the Interior Ministry and they're just extremely rude with her. And for instance, now she's trying to get her residency wasn't taken away. It essentially went into sort of a dormant, basically. So she had to go and renew it. And she went to the Interior Ministry on the date they told her to go. And the lady's response was, you're not here to live here. And she's like, I just had a child. I'm at home. Do you really think, if all places, I'd want to be here right now away from my husband? It just shows, instead of being supportive and helpful and humanitarian, those small gestures, they're extremely cold and diabolical, and there's just nothing to celebrate. It's just a sense of the word is probably hate. It's just you're treated as though you're hated, and it obviously psychologically affects you, knowing you're in a place that a lot of people don't see your existence there. They don't acknowledge you. They don't want to help you. They just see you as sort of somebody to work against, and that's part of it. So for me, to answer your question, we did have lawyers within the country. We had people that worked within the ministry, but they're not the decision makers. And the decision makers essentially said, what are you going to do? No. And we've tried several times. And we've gone through embassies here, embassies abroad, and also the Interior Ministry. And another thing that kind of bothered us too is, a lot of times they would get our hopes up and say, oh, no problem, we'll get him in. He'll be here in a week. Don't worry. A week would go by, and they would act as though the conversation was never had. So then it's, for a couple of days, you're a bit excited. It's happening. But then you realize, oh, nothing's happening. And then later on, somebody tells her, hey, I know somebody, come in. She goes in, and she's thinking, okay, they're going to work on it for us. And then, a week or two goes by, and again, it's as though, we can't do anything.
Yeah. If anyone's got any sort of information or will be able to help, please get in touch with Alaa. We'd like to see him reunited with his wife, and not being able to see his son either. So please do get in touch. I don't know what else to say apart from I'm really sorry to hear this. It's just a really sad situation, and people will ask me, this is all about travel and stuff, but actually this is part of life and travel. Sometimes you can go into places, and I've seen it myself, where people are stuck and they're isolated or they just can't get out. This is part of life and travel, and I said to you, it's really sad to hear, and we wish you the best of luck, and please keep us informed in what goes on. Before I let you go, your jobs and stuff, would your plan, once you've got everything, well, hopefully things get, will you move back to the States and go back to San Francisco?
I thought about that, but the situation right now in San Francisco is still internal dining is not allowed. A lot of my restaurant was based right in the heart of downtown in the financial district. And people now have been told that they're going to be working remotely at least 2021. So many of the buildings where all my customers were based are basically empty. So I ask a lot of people back in the Bay Area how San Francisco. There's an exodus actually outside of the city, which is fortunately pushing rents down from being the most expensive city in the year, at least in the United States, year over year. Now they're saying it's just becoming a homeless encampment. It's becoming a ghost town. Very few people go there. Getting on the subway to go in San Francisco, you usually have to stand up. Space was limited. Now they're saying you're basically getting on a relatively empty train when you go in. So that being said, as I debate to go back, a lot of people tell me that businesses are shutting down in large numbers. Restaurants are closing their doors. Even large brands that have a lot of cash on hand are unable to sustain themselves. What was supposed to be for a couple of months has now become 7. And they got some grants and what have you from the government, but it's just not enough. It was enough to sustain for maybe 2 months. 7 months later, they burnt through that cash essentially, and they're talking about second round and what have you. But all of this is loans, and we don't know if businesses are unable to be open. How are they exactly going to make the money off loans? You know what I mean? So it's a challenge, and it's a debate that I have here in Turkey. I'm even looking at opportunities, maybe opening up something, because although there's economic issues here, the country is pretty much open. Yeah. And United States, California, a lot of it's still very much closed with no prospect. There's talk of it reopening, but I've been told I had a conversation with my accountant yesterday that there's a lot of people who opened up and just closed their doors 2 months later because there was just you couldn't cover your expenses.
I can't figure out why the states have not controlled it. Obviously, a lot of people can't travel.
No, it's the way I project it. As I grew up in the United States, I appreciate my time there, but it's like a bully that everybody thinks is so powerful till somebody actually hits them and then they fall down. So the United States is not nearly as powerful. It's powerful in that people perceive its power and allowed it to behave in any manner it wanted to behave. But a lot of times what destroys somebody is from within. And you can see the structural weaknesses in a matter of months. Externally, the world saw the United States as a quasi-perfect place. And I dealt that in my town. Oh, you're American? Oh, I want to go there. Lovely, powerful, great. All those things that you want to hear. But the reality, I almost felt sad because these people have been brainwashed to believe something that is not true. I tell them, what nation leads the world in incarcerating its own citizens? They talk about the land of freedom, yet the United States leads the world in putting its own citizens in jail that are still there. So it doesn't live up to a lot of the propaganda. It doesn't live up to a lot of the soft power projection. We're really good at exporting our pop culture. But if you listen to the lyrics of our music, it shows you what kind of culture we really are and what we actually reward. If you take the time to actually hear what kind of message we're beaming out to the world, you realize that we're not that good. They wanted to tell us, no, but America's the greatest place on earth. Well, is it? Is it really? Is it really? And but now that they're seeing in just a number of months, it didn't take years, decades, centuries. It took a few months to show the structural weakness that we had.
Well, Alaa, I'm going to have to leave it there, and it's been great chatting to you. Great hearing your story. As I said to you, we wish you all the best in terms of your situation with your wife. As I said to you, if anyone has any information, can help, please do get in touch. But thank you again for coming on, and we'll speak to you soon.
Likewise. Have a great day. Enjoy yourself.
You too.
Safe travels.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers, sir. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
It was a fascinating talk, and I can tell you now that Alaa still hasn't been united with his wife or son, as the struggle for him still continues. If you'd like to get in touch with Alaa regarding this or anything else, you can do so via his Instagram under the handle @Alaa_Daoudi. That's it for Take a Wonder, Shebs. Hope to see you all very soon. Until next time, bye for now.